Hello again. Welcome to another edition of Media Watch. I'm your co-host, Eric Tait.
I'm Bob Anthony.
And I'm their friend and guest, Alan Singer.
Welcome, Dr. Singer. Always happy to have you with us. And this is being brought to you by the good graces of EVT Educational Productions, Manhattan Neighborhood Network, and Zoom. And we're taping the Wednesday before our Monday air. And interestingly enough, past weekend, which would be the weekend before when we air, was the Juneteenth celebrations. And I must make a note, folks, that I've never seen such Juneteenth proliferation in any way, shape, or form across the media, across whatever. It was truly an amazing amount of Juneteenth coverage for the first time I've ever seen it, but I guess this was the first actual practicing of the holiday. I think, Bob, you have an interesting story that speaks to how the surprise of Juneteenth being far and wide affected some people.
Yes, I mean, you're right, Eric. It was Juneteenth was covered very well, and there was a high level of participation from the public all over definitely all over New York City, but all over the country. I remember as a reporter in the 1980s covering Juneteenth Day, we'd barely, got a mention other than what I wrote about it, and you didn't see too much other media coverage, but there was a certain person in North Carolina, apparently, who went to the post office on Juneteenth Day. Finding it closed, he was like, "What's going on here?" And someone had to alert him to the fact that, oh, it's Juneteenth Day, it's a federal holiday. And he was like, "What's that?" So
Made-up holiday, you called it a made-up holiday?
Yes, so rather than stopping there, this person in North Carolina, and he turns out to be the director of the the Apple Festival in North Carolina, and
North Carolina, right.
And for some reason it just popped off my screen. Here we go. As I roll this up, he decided that it needed a social media post. So he posted on Facebook, "The post office is closed today for some made-up holiday that I never heard of. Just when is the old fat white man day? I really want to celebrate that day." And he thought that was a joke. He thought that was
White Man's Day, right?
That was really funny to him. And it turns out that he's the former Henderson County manager and the current executive director of the North Carolina Apple Festival. So, his writings go out to a lot of people.
Well, I'm willing to celebrate.
So you can imagine the blowback he got from that.
I'm willing to celebrate Old Fat White Man Day, but only on the condition that they cancel alternate side street parking in New York City.
There you go.
Now, I noticed what I noticed about Juneteenth this year is that MLK Day has always been a day for reflection, and Kwanzaa has been really spiritual. But Juneteenth has really been more like July 4th. It's a family day. It's a community day for celebration, and I just think it hit the right note.
Yeah, I was not only surprised but overjoyed about all the different celebrations that were popping up every which way, because growing up in the New York metro area, we didn't have much of an inkling of Juneteenth because basically it was predominantly celebrated in the South. Correct me if I'm wrong, Bob, but pretty much because it was a Texas holiday initially, because started when the US troops came to Galveston 2 years after the Civil War and said, "You people should no longer be slaving on these plantations. You've been freed for 2 years." And they went, "Oh, really? June 19th of 1865. And they said, okay, so then Texas started celebrating the June and whatever. And since it was the 19th, it became Juneteenth. Didn't know about that much, but over the years, it spread across the country and definitely spread in the Black community. So we began to know and began to learn. And No, it wasn't a made-up holiday. It was an actual holiday that people celebrated because they were freed from slavery. And it was a decree or an edict that reinforced the Emancipation Proclamation. And so, yeah, but he thought it was a made-up holiday and he was upset.
But the beautiful thing, Eric, is what I saw on TV. They had a great celebration on the steps of the Central Branch of the Brooklyn Public Library, and there were so many young people. And that to me is important, that they understood the holiday, that what it meant, and going forward that they would support it, as they mature. So to me, just having the youth involved was a big thing. It's something I did not see when I was a reporter in the 80s. It was like an old folks party.
Yeah. And that's the sign of progress. And yeah, a harbinger of things to come, we hope.
I think Bob's point is very important. I think one of the things that's happened is, as a result of the Black Lives Matter movement and the murder of George Floyd, I think young people are much more aware, and this day takes on much greater significance.
Yeah, I agree with you guys 100%, especially when it comes to young people. I have a sneaky suspicion that this group of young people that are coming along are equally as aware and alert, thanks to the Black Lives Matter movement, as any other generation. And they are more tech savvy. So I think they're doing most of their stuff electronically as opposed to just jumping out into the streets and protesting. That's my thinking. I'm hoping that they're using those skills to help further the cause and further the movement. And speaking of technology and part of the things that, before we get into January 6th and technology though, I want to talk about that survey or study that came out about 2 weeks ago that talked about the fact that the current group of young adults, teens to young adults, are identifying as transgender or might be in need of some definition of who their persons might be. And it's as high as maybe 25% of that, of the general public in that age category, which is the highest number it's ever been. And because that seems to be something that's on the rise, the fact that all these states with Republican-led legislatures, I saw a report that some 390 anti-LGBTQ plus bills are working their way through state legislatures that's going to impact these folk. The most egregious, of course, is the one that Texas passed, where they would criminalize parents who might provide health counseling and health assistance to their young people in need of whatever, hormone therapy, whatever, the health intervention. They call that child abuse, and passed a law that those people could get prosecuted for child abuse and could be reported and go to jail. The whole craziness, right? Joe Biden, our president, our real president, not what the Texas State Legislature Republican Party did in a goddamn whatever piece of thing they passed last week, 2 days ago. But last week when we hear that said Joe Biden is an illegitimate president, that's something we could talk about in the wake of our January 6th thing. But Biden signed an executive order that was designed to help push back against these proliferation of LGBTQ, anti-LGBTQ laws being passed statewide. But I remember there was a guy running in Alabama or Georgia, Bob, maybe you can pull up that story. One candidate, one Trump affiliated primary candidate was, if you could pull that guy up and some of the outrageous things he said that he wanted to put into being once he got elected, it was the scariest thing I have read in a long time.
It was both scary, and it showed a high level of ignorance and not listening to reality. But this is in South Carolina's 4th congressional district, And it's a candidate who I'm happy to say did not survive the primary,
Hey,
named Pastor Mark Burns. And when he was asked to comment on LGBTQ children and their parents, he said that not only will I vote to make sure that those parents be held for child abuse, because there's no such thing as trans kids, only abusive parents. And he also suggested, well, he didn't just suggest, he said that people who engaged in such action should be executed, as should Dr. Fauci should be executed for his treason. Just an astounding,
horrendous,
string of comments.
horrendous. I mean, calling for the execution of people. And this is a Trump acolyte. He's a pastor somewhere. Is that?
Yes, he's a pastor, and you're right. He was a Trump endorsed candidate in this district, which fortunately he did not move forward in.
It is horrendous what these people are trying to do these days.
But let me just throw in his exact quote, because we rather give the exact thing rather than our paraphrasing. We need to hold people for treason, start having public hearings, and start executing people who are found guilty for their treasonous acts against the Constitution of the United States of America, Burns concluded, just like they did back in 1776. I'm a historian. His grasp of history is microscopic. I've read the rest of the story. He basically doesn't know what the hell he's talking about.
Yeah, right. Which does not surprise me. He was Trump endorsed.
Yes.
No, these guys don't want to go back to 1776. They want to go back to 1692. I mean, we are talking about the endorsement of Salem witch trials, where people are drowned and burned at the stake because you're not happy with who they are. This, there's a level of increasing craziness that we've seen in what the Republican Party has embraced because of Donald Trump. And I think that's going to be the lead into January 6th, because the coverage of January 6th has exposed a level of treasonous craziness that no one anticipated that we would find.
Oh, yeah. I'm glad you made that segue, Alan, because we really need to get into January 6th. We could start with the fact that I just read a bombshell story. To me, it's a bombshell story. That some British documentarian by the name of Alex Holder and his crew were with Donald Trump on January 6th, filming what was going on in the White House. They'd been traveling with him since the back end of the 2020 campaign, because Jared Kushner, Mr. Expert at everything, said, oh, that'd be a great idea. Let's do the campaign. So he gave these guys almost carte blanche. So the rest of the Republicans in the White House, half of them didn't know this documentary crew was there. They just found out, 2 days ago or something like that, when they read it in Politico. But the interesting thing is, January 6th committee got wind of that, subpoenaed Alex Holder, subpoenaed his film, which he complied with the subpoena immediately. He didn't say, oh no, this is whatever. He said, you want it, you got it. And so while we're speaking, I'm sure they're screening the committee. And while we're speaking, he's preparing to go testify before that committee, Holder, tomorrow, Thursday, which when this airs, the folks who watch us will probably have been privy to what he had to say about what he knew about what Trump was doing in the White House on January 6th. And that film should be quite interesting, not only for the committee, but for the rest of us. I hear tell he got a streaming deal, so all of us might be able to see it later this summer. Should be interesting.
But what strikes me is the fact that it went from Politico breaking the news to in the hands of the committee practically instantaneously.
In less than a day almost. Yeah. I haven't seen anything move that fast since whatever. but I don't want to rehash all the testimony that we've heard so far. There's some key things we might want to get into, but what I'd like us to at least explore is that big, what do they call it, sword of Damocles, or bomb waiting to explode, or shoe waiting to drop, or whatever. But Ginni Thomas, remember we talked about Ginni Thomas on Media Watch 6 months ago when the first reports about her texting with Mark Meadows came out, and the fact that she was asking Mark Meadows to help make sure this election does not go whatever we said back then, it has hit the fan with the texts and the tweets that's come out.
Specifically for our listeners, the wife of Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas.
Thanks.
Just to be clear.
Because guess what? It turns out that Eastman, I keep confusing that lawyer. Is it Eastman? Is that his last name?
The guy with the hat?
The guy with the hat.
Yes.
Eastman, correct.
That's him.
Eastman Kodak, right? Eastman used to clerk Judge Clarence Thomas. He was one of Thomas's law clerks back in the day. And so not only was she texting with Meadows, she was texting with Eastman. Eastman, to bring our people up to date, is the guy who concocted the supposed legal rationale for challenging the election with this phony slate of electors, which the testimony so far has indicated that Donald Trump was deeply involved in that plot to send fake electors to certify him as the winner, even though he wasn't the winner. So she has been subpoenaed. She has been invited, let me put it that way. She said she's willing because she has so many things she'd love to clear up for the committee. So what do you think, Alan? Is she willing to clear up anything for the committee?
Well, what's interesting, of course, it's what they're going to press is what, not only what were her ties to the Trump campaign and Trump, but what did she share with her husband? Because her husband is on the United States Supreme Court, and he has not reclused himself from any discussion of the election. Somehow it appears they never talk. Now, I know if I was involved in something, I didn't talk to my partner, she would not forgive me. She would want to know everything that I was involved in. But apparently, Clarence Thomas turns a total blank eye, whatever, to what his wife is involved with. This is unbelievable. And it points to the politicalization of the court and why this Supreme Court, with its Trump majority, cannot be trusted to be honestly judicial. And we'll have to talk about this more soon because the court is right now on the verge of making a number of controversial decisions. But Ginni Thomas has the ear of the White House, has the ear of the Supreme Court, and she has endorsed lunatic conspiracy theories.
Bob, wasn't there a story that indicated that she had texted Eastman, and then Eastman had briefed some folk about the fact that they needed to push the slate of false electors just to create doubt so that it could get to the Supreme Court?
There was something in the, what was the exact quote? We need a clean slate, something to that effect. They needed an option. They needed to have something to show. Totally not constitutional, but
just to get it on
visually effective.
Just
if they had a slate of candidates they could push forward.
Part of it was we need to create enough confusion, and if there's a threat of violence, if this is not resolved, then the court would take it up. This was part of their reasoning, and so they were pushing to get any legal decision that could be then appealed to the Supreme Court. And he was telling his cohorts that he knew that the Supreme Court were fighting amongst themselves about whether they would be hearing this and whether it would turn out to be a 7-2 in favor of throwing out the elector. He thought he had some inside info coming from inside SCOTUS, inside the Supreme Court. So Alan, your point is correct to the point that, well, maybe he did have some conversations with his former boss who he clerked for, AKA Clarence Thomas. Maybe he did have a pointed conversation with Clarence's wife, Ginni, that led him to believe that, yeah, we might get at least a halfway decent hearing from the Supreme Court. So I would say the calls from at least one Democrat to ask for Clarence Thomas's impeachment, resignation, whatever, I think maybe might be extended to more than Clarence Thomas, but there should be some kind of hue and cry about the Supreme Court's lack of, or what seemingly their appearance of compromise, which is as bad as being compromised, correct?
What scared me, Eric, is that they understood that this was BS, but they had a plan. Just get the court decisions, just get a decision in the lower court and just keep bumping it up forward, and just tried to get to the door of the Supreme Court. And now we have a, we have the public appearance of doing something. And that pushes the ball ahead. I'm sorry, Alan, you had something.
No, I just wanted to comment that I think CNN and MSNBC have done an excellent job, both of presenting the coverage of the hearings, but also in their commentary. I found two of the testimonies striking to me, especially. They had an Arizona election official who documents exactly how he was pressured to break the law. And then they had two women who were poll watchers in Georgia. And because they did their job, their lives have been threatened. They basically have to go into hiding, because what Trump has done is he's threatened the lives of people in Arizona, people in Georgia, people in Michigan. And these are women who basically volunteer to support democracy in the United States. And now their lives are in jeopardy because Donald Trump has stirred up mobs.
I only saw a little piece of that, but it broke my heart. Go ahead,
Yes.
Alan, please.
Now, the other piece is, again, and this is, I worry very much. I think the hearing has made a very clear case that there was a criminal conspiracy and that it involved the top echelons of the Trump administration and the Trump campaign, even maybe the president. But I'm looking and I'm waiting for any leading Republican who must be watching this and saying, this is totally unacceptable. I mean, where is Mitt Romney? Where is the Senator Collins from Maine? Where is Murkowski from
Murkowski, yes.
Murkowski at Alaska? They've kept their mouths shut. So what we have is these only two Republicans, Cheney and
Kissinger.
They're the only two who have responded at all to the overwhelming proof has been presented. And the rest of the Republican Party says, well, it's just a show. This is not a show. This is a documentation of a war against democracy. I am worried, and I just also worry that the public, the Republican voters, they're ignoring it. They're saying, that's your opinion. And they just ignore evidence. And it's very scary about what's happening in the United States.
Well, the interesting thing, I'm as much worried about silence from the Republican Party, but there are two things that I made note of based on what you said and what I've seen. A couple of fake news people, the organization that we don't call the news organization, actually came out. One of the blondes, not Laura Ingraham, the other blonde, Ellen or whatever her name is. And because I don't watch them, I got the information from my inbox on a Yahoo feed, but she was referring to that testimony from the Arizona election official who said that he was open to hearing the arguments that they had about the election being stolen, but he pretty much asked them, all right, I will meet with you and you can show me what you have so I can see whether I need to do something. And he said every time he asked them for evidence before the meeting, they couldn't provide it or wouldn't provide it. And then he sat down with them for the meeting and asked them, okay, here I am, here we are, where's the evidence? And they said, oh, we didn't bring it with us, but we can get it for you. And he said, well, you know what? If you didn't bring it, it means, as far as I'm concerned, I'm not violating my oath and I'm not doing anything that's going to put this election in jeopardy because the votes have been counted and they're certified and that's it. Well, the blonde commentator on fake news actually came out and said she was appalled at the fact that this guy asked them more than once and had a meeting with them and they failed to provide the evidence. And she said, that is the craziest thing, or something, I'm paraphrasing. But when the fake news people said they didn't provide the evidence for the charges of fraud in the election, then that's almost like the dam breaking. And one of their actual anchors comes out and says that. And that to me was one watershed moment. The other one, not related to the hearing, but is related to the hearing, is I'm reading my headlines yesterday, or I'm listening to the radio, and I hear Merrick Garland is in Ukraine trying to investigate whether there are going to be war crime trials for the Russians engaging in the war in Ukraine. And I'm saying to myself, why is Merrick Garland in Ukraine worrying about war crimes and a war that's still going on when he got a major criminal prosecution going on about the destruction of his own democracy at home? And he is dragging his feet about who he's going to bring prosecutions about against for an attempted coup. That to me was the craziest story I had heard. And my answer, or my thing is, why are the Democrats not asking Merrick Garland, why are you in Ukraine and not pushing this agenda? That's my take on that.
Very good point. And we have about 1 minute and 15 seconds left.
I
Well,
think we should arrest them all, prosecute them all, and let the jury decide who's guilty and who's not.
but only Merrick Garland can go out and arrest them because it's the Justice Department's job. And that's why these people are saying, the committee, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm paraphrasing. They said, we are not doing criminal referrals. We're placing the evidence to the American people and everybody else, hint, hint, Justice Department, of criminal activity. And then it's incumbent of the people whose bailiwick that this falls under to take action. And right now, their recent demands for transcripts to help criminal prosecutions is fine, but let's start naming some names and going after some people.
In Georgia, Trump called the Secretary of State and said on the phone, recorded, find me 11,000 votes. Do you know that in Georgia, they counted the votes 3 times and they couldn't find the 11,000 votes because they weren't there? And Georgia finally said this was the best election we ever had.
We're out of time. Right, Bob?
Yes.
This has been Media Watch. I'm your co-host, Eric Tait.
Bob Anthony. Catch up to us on Twitter and YouTube at Media Watch EVT.
And I'm their guest and friend, Alan Singer. Thank you for having me.
Thanks again, Alan. Appreciate you joining us. Folks, stay safe, and we'll catch you the next time.